Hello and welcome everyone. This is your astrology forecast for full moon in Libra. And this full moon is happening on the 1st of April, the first day of April. And this is another significant lunation. I mean, each lunation is significant. It's really pointless to mention how significant each lunation is, and each day and each moment, really. But here we are talking about certain cycles and energies that help us understand our place in the world, our experiences, our soul path, our relationships. And this is first full moon after the eclipse, and it's here to reveal something to us. And it's time of culminations, as each full moon is its time of culminations, revelations, disclosures, closures, completions, times when things come either to an end or to a fruition, or both, really. These are, full moons are when something comes to a full circle. And this is full moon in Libra, which means that the sun is in Aries. Sun is opposing sign of Libra. And together they create this axis that is very powerful, the first and the seventh house. It's the cross of the zodiac, the main one that is related, that represents ascendant and descendant. Ascendant is Aries, it's the first house. It's affirmation of I am, and I create. And then across the street is Libra, descendant. Here is where the sun rises, Aries in the first house, the sunrise. And then we have the seventh house, the sunset, and you are, and it's the relationship. This is, Aries, it's me, and Libra, it's you, and this is the dynamic between me and you. And these are, very powerful mystical teachings of others, of other aspects of ourselves that we meet through others. And we'll talk a lot about that here. This is where the sun sets, but this is where the soul sees. And this is the moment where we can see something. And full moons are moments when we may be emotionally overwhelmed, and when we may react in a way that we don't usually react, and when we feel more easily provoked than at other times. So it's powerful if we are aware and observant a couple of days before and a couple of days after this full moon, and try to learn from these energies, not just to wait and see what's going to happen, not just confirm, oh yes, this is because of the full moon. That's not the point of these energies. The point is for us to really experience the root of what is going on, to feel the feelings, and to accept and release, accept and release. This is the mantra, always. And, there is a moment each day when the sun begins to descend. This is, not yet night, not day anymore, but this is, where shadows are stretching, colors are playing and dancing, everything becomes relational. Everything is in relationship with something. Things are, colors are mixed and everything is mixed. And light is no longer dominating. It's meeting darkness. And in that meeting, we gain new sight. And, it is the moment of descendant, the place where the self meets the other, where identity dissolves into reflection. And where, this is, Aries says I am, and Libra asks at what cost to connection. And this descending is Libra, the sunset, the east, we have Aries and west, this is the east. So there is going to be strong polarity within us, and we are going to feel this dance of the night and day, the shift between night and day happening within us, the shift between light and dark, and we will be able to feel everything. And that's why full moons can be very, very emotionally transformative, and this can be emotional reset as well. And we feel tension because the sun in Aries is not alone. It's close enough to Saturn to carry its weight. So Saturn is also in Aries, and it's at the 5th degree of Aries, while this full moon is happening at the 12th degree of Libra. The sun is at the 12th degree of Aries, so they are somewhere 7 degrees apart from each other. And they are not, it's not exact opposition with Saturn, but it's close enough. And this is like an authority that is standing behind the self and asking, are you ready to take responsibility for who you are? Are you ready to take full responsibility for what you're feeling and experiencing in relationships? Are you ready to take responsibility to fully own your feelings in a particular relationship? Libra and the 7th house is all about this dynamic of you and I. And it's relationship not only with others, but relationship with the self through others. And at the same time, this full moon squares Jupiter in Cancer and trines Pluto in Aquarius. And Venus, the ruler of this full moon, is in Taurus, at the very beginning of Taurus, in its own sign also. So Venus is very strong and very important role, and she is in square with Pluto. So this is very intense, very powerful for relationships, very transformative, and it's getting us to the bottom of something. And there are some kids around me. I didn't know they are making a trip today here, but let's see if I can do it here, or maybe I'm going to have to relocate. But for now, they seem cool. No coincidence here. So, as I said, this is not only about relationships, it's about truth inside relationships. And the archetype of Libra is often misunderstood. People think Libra is all about love, harmony, and beauty, but Libra is not about peace in that way. Libra is about balance that comes after separation. And Aries is the first breath of life. This is the newborn that is crying and that says, I exist. And Libra is the first recognition of, understanding that I am not alone. There are others around me. I am in a relationship with. These are one-on-one connections, one-on-one bonds. And Libra, in esoteric traditions, Libra is associated with the setting sun, the gateway between worlds, the scales of Maat in ancient Egypt that I mentioned a lot. I won't go into that now. The weighing of the soul. And, here is the question, is our heart light enough to meet another without distortion? And in Kabbalistic symbolism, Libra is connected to the idea of judgment and equilibrium. And in Gnosticism, Gnostic teachings, they precede Christianity. And just as Sufism precedes Islam. And it's very, very powerful if we can come back to the roots of these religious movements, because this is where there are hidden keys left for us as well. But they all speak the same, right? Love. Even though we don't see it being practiced, but this is on us. We are not supposed to look at how others behave anymore, or to compare ourselves to others and to say, okay, so if they are not doing it, I'm not doing it either. This is our responsibility. So Venus is planet of love, and full moon in Libra is our relationship with others. So this is not only relationships between two individuals, it's also relationship with everything. It's our relationship between two states as well. So this is something very, very powerful. And as I said, in Gnosticism, it represents the moment where illusion begins to crack because we encounter something outside ourselves. And there are many psychological and religious and mystical layers here, and they are all connected. You know, nothing is separate from each other. We should not exclude anything from the story. We can learn from everything. We learn through everything. You know, whether it's good or bad, it's all experience. You know, good experience, bad experience, but it's experience. And that's what matters. As long as we are not, you know, being defined by that experience, because we allow experiences to define us. But we are not defined by experiences. We are defined by how we interpret those experiences. We are defined by what we do with those experiences. You know, as I always say, and I will keep saying it, it doesn't matter what is happening to us. What matters is how we deal with what is happening to us. You know, and there is, you know, that psychological layer, and I will mention again Carl Jung. I'm mentioning him a lot in these videos lately, but it's really appropriate somehow, and it just comes to me while I'm speaking this. And he said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And this is Libra. This is what this full moon is about. You know, the mirror that disturbs us is the mirror that reveals us. You know, what disturbs us is what reveals us to ourselves. You know, can we handle this disturbance? Can we handle real connection, real relationship? And you know, gratefulness is not meant to be in places where everything is nice. Gratefulness is not for good things. Gratefulness is for hard things that are happening to us. This is where we have to practice gratefulness for things that we want to erase, things that disturb us, that irritate us. So this is the meeting with the other. This is the stage of initiation, meeting of the other, with the other. And you know, this is not romantic union, even though it can be, but this is more confrontation. This is encounter, it's a reflection. And Libra is not here to make us comfortable. You know, truth is never there to make us comfortable, but it eventually leads us to that state of being, because it gives us wisdom and relief of knowing that we are not so much in control of everything. What we are in control of is how we interpret things. And, you know, just as true astrology also shouldn't be there to, to make us feel comfortable, even though it goes into that direction, mostly, as I see. Just as AI is there to make you feel comfortable, and astrology and truth and Gnosticism and all these things shouldn't be there to make us feel comfortable, but to wake us up. To wake us up. So if I am, for example, sharing some things here that trigger some people, as I know they do, well, these stories and sharings are not there to comfort us, but to wake us up. And we are all in this together. So, you know, Libra full moon is here to make us conscious. And this opposition between the sun and the moon this is an ancient story. And this opposition between the sun and the moon is happening once a month, each month. And this between Libra and Aries, between, you know, the east and the west, between the sunrise and the sunset, this is the tension between the self and the other, between our independence and connection, between our desire and harmony, between the truth and diplomacy. And, you know, Aries says, I must be true to myself. And Libra asks, but are you aware of the impact of your truth? You know, can you speak the truth with love, or are you just speaking the truth for the sake of speaking the truth? And this full moon exposes immature independence. It's here to expose immature independence. And it exposes where, you know, being yourself has been an excuse for unconscious behavior. And this is something that we often meet in our relationships. You know, when I'm just being myself, but it's used as an excuse and we should definitely really take full responsibility for how we act and react and what we feel. You know, Saturn is very close, it's in Aries, and it's triggering a big cycle for the next many years. And you know, this axis, this opposition between the sun and the moon also exposes the opposite of what I mentioned. You know, where have we abandoned ourselves to maintain peace? And you know, where have we betrayed ourselves for connection, for the sake of connection? And where have we destroyed connection in the name of self? So we are about to see which polarity we belong to, which story we are learning through. You know, are we destroying the connection or losing ourselves? Can we find the balance? Can we find the harmony? Can we really meet the other and ourselves? You know, and this square with Jupiter in Cancer, you know, this is, you know, emotion. This is where emotions enter the field, and Jupiter in Cancer expands emotional reactions, emotional memories, family patterns, attachment wounds. You know, we can expect overreactions, exaggerations, emotions, you know, reaching extremes, extreme reactions in one-on-one relationships. And this square, as I said, brings emotional exaggeration and reactions that feel bigger than the moment, because they are not just about the moment, they are much older, they are ancestral, they reach our family roots and patterns, and that's why reaction can be overwhelming. And you know, in Eastern philosophy, especially in teachings of karma, relationships are not random, of course. They are, you know, they are fields of unfinished energy. And you know, what we meet outside is our own mind. And when something triggers us now, it's not just about the person, it's about our history. It's about our conditioning, it's about our unprocessed emotional body. Really, it's not about the other person. And of course, we have to take responsibility as well if we say or do or react in a way that hurts another person. But, you know, if something triggers us now, we should really take a deep look into where it comes from, where are the roots of that reaction. And we may probably find it somewhere far away. We may not be able to articulate it, but we will be able to feel it. And we have to give space to those feelings to be felt. Give them space. You know, there is nothing bad in feeling angry or sad or desperate. These are all, you know, regular, natural, valid emotions. And we have to give them space sometimes. And this full moon can bring emotional confrontations, you know, family-related realizations, deep vulnerability, resurfacing. And Pluto trining this full moon and squaring Venus is where we enter the underworld. And Pluto in Aquarius trine the full moon offers transformation through awareness. This is helpful energy, you know, trine is there to support transformation. So what we discover now, what is being revealed in our relationship, is there to help us transform our ideas of relationships, of love, our social norms, our social conditionings, because Pluto is in Aquarius, so these are all, you know, Aquarius is about ideas, it's intellectualizing emotions, it's about society, it's about our place in the world. You know, we may be able to see things more clearly now, to see how our family patterns impact the greater scale, the bigger picture of our social life, of how our society is built. And we may step outside of our emotional pattern and we can witness ourselves. You know, can we dare to witness ourselves? And witness means not to, get into any identification with it, just to be witness of ourselves. And Venus, ruler of this full moon, is in Taurus, and she is in square with Pluto. And this is crucial because Venus in Taurus wants stability, comfort, safety, physical closeness, touch, sensuality. She wants nice and good things. She wants luxurious things. But Pluto says, that nothing that is built on illusion will remain. So we may be faced with financial issues as well, because Venus in Taurus, finances, resources, food supply, livelihood, everything that sustains us and that maintains our body, our physical wants and needs. And these things may go through profound transformation now, because, as I said, nothing that is built on illusion can remain now. And this can bring up themes like, power dynamics in relationships, power struggles, control versus surrendering, attachment versus truth, and fear of loss as well. Jealousy, possessiveness, Venus, Pluto, when they are in square, Venus, planet of love and harmony, Pluto, lord of the underworld, and shadows. So we may be taken into our shadow world in order to meet ourselves and to see what we've been running away from and what love is truly about and what love is not about. We may be faced with illusions of love, of what we thought love is about. And we should all ask ourselves, what is love for me? What is love for you? How would you define love? What does it mean to be in love? What does it mean for each of you? We should all ask ourselves this question and just sit with it, or take this question for a walk. I love taking my questions for a walk. I always gain something. It doesn't have to be a concrete answer, but it can be a feeling. It can be a moment. It can be a moment when I feel the breeze, or I just feel the sun ray, or I just, see something and I feel that's it. This is it. I don't need explanation any further. And you will feel something. But, we are not required to react from our old self. This is very important. Of course, if we react from our old self, it's fine. Let's not judge ourselves for this. Let's not punish ourselves for this. And let's try to understand. It's a very big thing if we recognize that we reacted from old self. That's already a big thing. It's already transformation in progress. And in yogic philosophy, relationships are not about fulfillment. They are about purification. And this is, the place where we meet another and realize you are not who you thought you were. This is what everyone experiences when we go into a certain relationship. You are not who you thought you were. And this is what relationship reveals to you, for better or worse. This is revealed for each of us and for the person across from you as well. You are not who you thought you were, and this is big revelation for each of us if we are courageous enough to admit it to ourselves, to rise above ego perspective, and to be able to see from many sides, many different sides. Libra has the ability to see things from different angles. So we are now asked to see things from higher perspective. And Jupiter is in the game. Even though it's square, Jupiter is big benefic. And it's the great teacher, the wisdom keeper. Jupiter is here to expand our consciousness, to expand our heart, since it's in Cancer. And tears may come up, of course, and it's very good. Tears purify. This is our natural salt that turns our emotions into a liquid state, and it purges us. So it's very, very powerful to sit with ourselves and You know, there is a great mystic known as Babaji, and it is believed that this force or entity or energy, call it as you will, Babaji, is still around. And his teachings often speak about detachment within love, not withdrawal, but presence without possession. You know, presence without possession. Without the need to correct others, to fix others, to advise them without being asked to give advice. Just being there as pure presence, as pure love. And not expecting anything from others, but doing the best that we can within ourselves. Because Babaji knew and knows that everyone we meet is an aspect of ourselves. Not only him, but everyone who experienced some kind of deeper insight and ability to see beyond this narrow-mindedness. You know, each person we meet, they carry a certain aspect of ourselves. They carry a piece of puzzle of who we are. And you know, the highest expression of Libra is to love without losing yourself, to connect without need to control, and to see without projecting. And it takes some work here. That's why Saturn is also in the game. Self-mastery is necessary, and responsibility. And there is one short, interesting story, very simple, but it works perfectly well with this Libra full moon. You know, there was once a man who went to a wise teacher and he said, I want to find true love. And the teacher gave him a mirror and said, hold this in front of every person you meet. And the man became frustrated. You know, this shows me nothing but them. And the teacher replied, no, it shows you what you do for them. Not what you do for them, what you do to them. You know, so the man was frustrated and said, it shows me nothing but them. It shows me only others. How am I, what does it mean, true love? And the teacher said, no, it shows you what you do to them. So over time, this man began to notice, you know, how he expected, how and what he feared, how and what he withdrew, how and what he controlled. And one day he came back and said, you know what, I no longer need this mirror. And the teacher smiled and said, now you are ready to meet someone. And this is Libra, highest expression. So what this full moon is asking from us, you know, it's not asking us to fix our relationships, it's asking us to see ourselves within them. And, you know, it's very powerful if we can pause before reacting, observe emotional triggers without, you know, getting overwhelmed by them, speak the truth but with awareness and love. This is very important. You know, let's not speak the truth just for the sake of speaking the truth, but speak the truth with awareness. And let's notice where we seek validation and where we avoid honesty. Because relationships are not happening to us. They are happening through us. Another very important thing to understand, you know, these relationships are through us. And just like when emotions overwhelm us, you know, it's not like we are that emotion. Like people are identifying with their emotions, and emotions come and go, just like clouds in the sky. That's great allegory. I don't know who spoke about it, I forgot, but you know, that the sky is pure consciousness and clouds are thoughts. And imagine if sky identified with clouds. So this is what we do. We identify with our thoughts and emotions and perspectives. We forget that we have pure consciousness, we have the whole sky. And clouds, they come and go. They come and go. So we should just let them pass through us. Let them pass through us. And, you know, as the sun sets, we do not lose light. We enter a different kind of seeing, different perspective. You know, we can see that every day when night falls. The sun is gone, but it's not the end of the world, just different perspective, completely different perspective. And this is something that we are learning now. We are learning how to move, how to shift between different perspectives. And you know, this is that quiet hour when the world loosens its grip on certainty. And the sun is no longer commanding, it begins to withdraw. And it has something to offer, you know. And this is a moment when everything is defined by how it touches something else. And, you know, not in harmony, as people like to say, you know, about Libra, but in interdependence. And in realization that nothing exists alone, nothing stands alone. Everything is in relationship with everything else. Everything is in relationship with everything else. Just look around you, look above you, look underneath. You know, everything is related to everything. And this realization changes everything. And, you know, there are truths that can only be seen when the light is no longer direct. And truths that appear only when we are forced to look sideways through another. And we are now meeting the illusion of two, the illusion of duality. Of course, we live in a world of duality. But there is awareness that is being rebirthed now. Awareness that this is an illusion. And we have been taught to divide experience, you know, I and you, self and the other, the one who feels and the one who causes the feeling. But the deeper we go into the structure of reality, the more this division begins to collapse. And, you know, there is no meeting between two separate beings. There is only a field of awareness that is taking two forms so that it can recognize itself. Sorry. And the moment we stand before another person, we are not encountering differences. We are encountering the edge of our own perception. And this edge is alive. It responds, it reflects, it distorts, it reveals. And this is why some encounters feel effortless, as if something in us already knows the other. And others feel unbearable, as if something in us is being exposed against our will. And, you know, it's not about them. It's about what in us has been waiting to be seen. So this full moon is here to reveal to us what in you has been waiting to be seen. So let's see. And, you know, this is the mirror of life. And it's precise. It's selective. It's intelligent. And it doesn't show us everything. It shows us what we are ready or forced to encounter. And, you know, there is a law that is rarely spoken clearly, but is always present. You know, nothing enters your experience without resonance. You know, it's not about similarity, it's about resonance. So nothing will ever enter your experience if it's not in resonance with what is in you. And yeah, of course, we may not be what we see, but something in us recognizes it, responds to it, reaches towards it. And I think Rumi said, but don't take it 100% sure, but, you know, some Eastern mystic said it, that the heart is a mirror, polish it with love and it will reflect the universe. And this is really, really true, but it's not some cliche saying, it's real. And we may notice how quickly perception shifts now, how someone we thought we understood becomes unfamiliar, how something we tolerated becomes unbearable, how something distant suddenly feels intimate, and the mirror becomes clearer. So we are going to see something that we've been avoiding or neglecting or ignoring or denying or delaying or, escaping. This full moon reveals the weight we carry without knowing we are carrying it. These are reactions that are inherited before language. These are fears that are shaped before our memory. These are patterns that repeat themselves through different phases. Just like in partnerships, in love relationships, we don't find new partners. It's the same entity, but different face, different body, but same patterns. That's why we say, why we choose always the same, why we always experience the same, because we carry it unresolved within ourselves, and it will keep coming up in everyone we meet until we learn, until we dissolve it or transform it or acknowledge it or admit it, all these things. But what if what we feel is not entirely ours? What if it is something moving through us, seeking recognition so that it may finally rest? What arises when you are seen, when you are misunderstood, when you are desired, when you are rejected? It's very important to observe what arises. And this is when we may be faced with acknowledging that we say less than we feel, or we adjust more than we notice, and we become easier to be with. And in doing so, we become harder to find ourselves. This is one side of the story. This is, the quiet disappearance. The other side is louder. It insists, it pushes, it declares, it calls itself authenticity. But often it is simply a reaction, a refusal to feel the vulnerability of meeting. And between these two, we are going to see, are we in the first story where we are losing ourselves, finding hard to find ourselves because we are doing everything to avoid the conflict, or are we the ones who are pushing and being domineering? So between disappearance and domination is where we meet ourselves and the other. There is a third way, a way that does not distort the self and does not reject the other either. This is, there are forces moving now that do not belong to the surface. They do not speak in words, they do not resolve through logic, they move through intensity. And we may feel them as a sudden need for truth, or an inability to tolerate what once seemed acceptable, or a quiet but firm knowing that something must change. This is exposure. Anything built on avoidance begins to tremble now, and anything rooted in clarity begins to deepen. And it's the moment of seeing, as I said. To truly meet another person is rare. This is not about, being able to speak to another, to feel understood by another, to relate, but to meet. It requires, that nothing in us is trying to become something. No image to maintain, no wound to defend, no expectation to impose. As Babaji, just presence, pure love. And, we move toward others, and we are seeking connection, we are seeking understanding and belonging. But if we are attentive, we begin to notice something different, that every interaction, every reflection, every emotional movement leads us back, not to the same self we started with, but to a deeper layer of ourselves, a self that is less reactive, that is less defined by circumstances, that is less dependent on feedback, on response. And, let's remember, all of us, that there is a place within us that is not touched by any of this. There is a place within us that has never been hurt, that is not touched by anything, and let's become aware of the place from which we are relating. Some of us may go through really profound experience that there was never truly you and the other, only the one. And, learning how to recognize itself through the beauty and the difficulty of meeting. So, the one who meets itself, this is, the experience of oneness through meeting the other, through the intensity of meeting the other. And this may feel like a twilight zone for some. Libra, sun is setting, descendant, Pluto is in the game, in support with this full moon, but in intense relationship with the ruler of this full moon. And in ancient teachings, twilight was never seen as an ending. It was called the hour of revelation, just like this full moon. And because, what is obvious during the day becomes symbolic. And the symbols are how the soul speaks. This is the language of the soul. And, we speak of Aries and Libra as if they are opposing forces. I and you, self and the other, independence and union. But this is the first illusion that this energy is here to dissolve. And there is no you and I. There is only one consciousness experiencing itself from two positions, from two different angles, from two different stories and perspectives. The moment we meet another person, we are encountering a boundary of our own awareness. And there is great quote from ancient texts called Upanishads. Upanishads. There is fear only where there is duality. Where duality was not, there was no dissatisfaction or fear. Therefore, it was supreme satisfaction. That was the universal I. So there is fear only where there is duality. And, Libra is not here to maintain the illusion of the other. Libra is here to reveal that the other is the place where we have not yet recognized ourselves. And this is why relationships feel so intense, because of, recognition that is trying to happen. And, older stories always talk about the law of mirrors. And in Hermetic schools and carried through Sufi poetry, encoded in Kabbalah, lived, by mystics. And, they always said one thing, that, nothing can appear before us that is not already within us. Nothing can appear before us that is not already within us. There is nothing outside of us that isn't already within us. And this doesn't mean that we are the other person. It means that what we perceive, what we react to, what we long for, what we resist is filtered through our inner structure. So when someone triggers us, what awakens is not them. It is something in us that recognizes itself in disguise. And, there is a great quote from Goethe. He said, "A man sees in the world what he carries in his heart." So let's use this, let's apply this wisdom in our everyday life, Let's see what we see in the world is what we carry in our heart. And, we may notice sudden clarity about something or someone, emotional reactions that feel disproportionate, realizations that arrive quietly but that may change everything. And, we are going to feel the weight of the heart. Every resentment we carry, every unspoken truth, every attachment that is rooted in fear, all of it has a weight. And when we stand before another person, that weight enters the space between us. And this is why some relationships feel effortless and others feel like gravity itself is pulling them down. And, let's not destroy connection in order to feel powerful, because this may also be very strong now because of this Pluto in the game. Saturn stands nearby, not interfering but observing, like an ancient teacher who no longer explains, only watches, like a witness. And what it watches is simple. Can we remain ourselves while standing in front of another? Most people cannot, because identity is often built through reaction. And, there is a big tide moving beneath everything. We may feel it in subtle waves, memories resurfacing, old emotional patterns being reactivated through this square with Jupiter. But, most people try to control the surface And very few understand that this disturbance itself is showing us what lies beneath. So if something emotional arises now, do not rush to fix it. Do not analyze it immediately, sit with it. Take it for a walk, as I say. Let it reveal its origin, because often what we feel is not about this moment right here, it's about a pattern that has been repeating itself through different phases. And, there is no neutral ground here, there is transformation. And what does it mean to truly meet another person? What does it truly mean to meet the other? And let's just be aware that there is nothing in us that needs to hide, nothing in us that needs to control. We are not seeking confirmation of our identity. Let's try to apply this. And most meetings are not meetings, they are just exchange of expectations. So let's ask ourselves, are we truly meeting the other, or are we just exchanging expectations? And there is this paradox in Libra, and just like everywhere, that we go towards the other only to return to ourselves. We lose ourselves only to find a deeper version of who we are. And we see another clearly and realize that we were always looking at ourselves. There is this still point inside us, place that is untouched by reaction, fear, or expectation. And if we can stand there, then every interaction becomes highly clear. And with this, I would end this forecast. And let's just try to really allow the other to be present and allow ourselves to be present and to fully feel it without trying to fix, to dominate, to explain, to analyze. Just pure presence. Love without possession and attachment. Can we do it? Can we truly do it? Again, let's ask ourselves what love is for us. What does it mean to be in love, to express love, to share love, to be love, to embody it with awareness, with consciousness, with responsibility. I love you all and see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.